This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Click the link in the description or go to surfshark.deals/weireinhell to get 85% off of Surfshark for 2 years plus an additional 3 months for free. Hey everyone. So, in my last video, I discussed the Canadian We charity and used it as an entry point into a broader discussion of the issues with charities and specifically focused on critiquing charitable foundations and what Andrea Smith refers to as the non-profit industrial complex in the book, The Revolution Will Not Be Funded. In this video, I originally planned to discuss the critiques of international development as well as volunteerism, but then We personally contacted me, informing me of some issues that they had with my previous video. I should say that there are mistakes in lots of my videos. This is a one-man operation, and while I try to do my best to be accurate, things do slip through the cracks, at which point all I can do is try to admit when I'm wrong. These are usually pretty small mistakes, but for this last one, I messed up in some more major ways. And so, in this video, I'm going to be addressing these objections that we had to my previous video, making corrections for things that I did get wrong, and providing more context.
I know how you sleep at night on a bed of all the seats of mine. You walk the world untouchable. You take your fill until you're full. All in the name of grace and good. All in the name of grace.
Come on, there has to be something that ships overnight. Oh, hi. If you're anything like me, then you've spent so much time agonizing over the details of a script about the non-profit industrial complex that you've completely left your holiday shopping to the last minute, and now you're desperately trying to find a gift for your 6-year-old nephew before Hanukkah dinner tomorrow night. What do 6-year-olds even like? Your brother said Paw Patrol, but you're pretty sure that ACAB includes Chase the Dog. So, what do? Well, luckily, this video is sponsored by the perfect gift for children of all ages, Surfshark VPN. Here's what you do. Click the link in the description or go to surfshark.deals/weireinhell or use the promo code weireinhell at checkout, all one word, no apostrophe, to take advantage of Surfshark's holiday promotion where they're offering 85% off for 2 years plus an additional 3 months for free. Then you print out the login credentials and put them inside the biggest box you can find. Your nephew may be confused at first, but you just explain to him that Surfshark is the only premium VPN with servers in over 100 countries. With it, he can trick streaming sites to access region-locked content like Death Note or Beastars. But not only that, Surfshark can also be used to keep his private information safe while browsing the web, either at home or on the go. And best of all, you don't even have to worry about shipping times, since Surfshark is one gift that arrives immediately. And so, the only thing that you'll have to wait for is when your mom will let you use her printer. This time of the year can be stressful for everyone, but thanks to Surfshark, the hardest part of your holiday is going to be telling your nephew that no, you can't be his new daddy, as your older brother carries him away crying and screaming. Boom. You just got even with your brother for the time that he convinced you not to bring all of your Inuyasha posters to your college dorm room when you first moved out, because he told you that everyone would make fun of you for them. Have a nice drive home, bro, or, as your son now calls you, Philip. So, don't wait around like Sashomaru. Click that link in the description to get Surfshark for 85% off for 2 years plus an additional 3 months for free. Now, back to the video. Firstly, while you can check out that video first, I'm going to provide some brief context for anyone who hasn't seen it regarding We Charity and the scandal that they were involved in. We Charity was a massive Canadian children's charity. Originally named Free the Children, We's focus was on ending child slavery in the global south, as well as a bunch of various initiatives here in Canada, as well as in America and England. These involved, but weren't limited to, We Schools, in which they provided teaching aids and curriculums to teachers, as well as We Days, massive events featuring performances by major pop stars and talks given by celebrities, politicians, and corporate donors. In addition to donations, many of which came from children as well as large corporate donors, they also run a for-profit social enterprise called Me to We. It was founded by the brothers Craig and Mark Kielberger when they were themselves children. Then, in 2020, a program was launched by Prime Minister of Canada and retired minstrel performer Justin Trudeau. Sorry, I know that's a cheap shot, but also, it is genuinely wild how much this man loves wearing blackface. Like, every election, new pictures get leaked, and then when he's asked how many more pictures there are of him, he just doesn't know. Also, this picture is especially fucked because you can see that he painted his knees. Like, just think about that. He decided to wear blackface, but also, of course, your boy Justin had to wear his rippies to the function. Rippies is what I assume Justin Trudeau calls ripped jeans. Like, this guy was at Costco buying shoe polish in bulk so he wouldn't shatter the illusion. So anyways, towards the beginning of the pandemic, Trudeau launched the Canada Student Summer Grant Program, which was meant to help young people who were losing their summer jobs due to COVID by paying them to do community service. This was a huge program and would require someone who could administer it on a ground level. Trudeau picked the We Charity, which he, and to be fair, most Canadian politicians had ties to without looking at any other organizations. To be fair, the We Charity was the largest children's charity in the country with a massive organizational infrastructure. They weren't an unreasonable choice for this. But they weren't the only organization that was qualified either. The YMCA, as well as the largest union in the country, the National Service Alliance of Canada, have both said, "Bro, what the fuck?" And so this raised some eyebrows. It then came out that the We Charity had paid Trudeau's mother and brother to give numerous speeches and gave his finance minister's daughter a job. By the way, when I talked about this in my last video, I showed a picture of the wrong daughter. We asked me to make a point of mentioning that the daughter that they gave a job to was this woman who was adopted from Uganda. In fairness to We, they have claimed that they were unaware that they were the only charity being considered and that they didn't know that the Trudeau government hadn't taken steps to address this possible conflict of interest. However, many saw this as a sweetheart deal, and so the We Charity wound up at the center of this scandal and was attacked from both the right and the left by politicians who I think were at least in part using We to hurt Trudeau. With the political spotlight now shining on them, the charity came under greater criticism, not just for this scandal, but all sorts of other things. Ultimately, the charity wound up ending all operations in Canada. I talked more about all of this in my last video, but for our purposes here, I think that that's all the background that you'll need. Anyways, 6 days after I released that video, I received an email from the executive director of We Charity, Scott Baker, a man who looks like if he was born 300 years ago, his job title would be Village Oaf. The email is kind of surreal. Scott told me about the multiple defamation suits that they're pursuing. Also, this was sent to my private email address, which I had thought was in no way connected to my YouTube channel. Also, when I was like 18, my friend and I produced a comedy show and donated the money to Free the Children. Scott sent me the newspaper listing for that show, which I don't even have that. Anyways, they sent me corrections for things I said in the video which they believe to be untrue and asked me to read those now. This is completely real. First of all, in my video, I claimed that We was very litigious against media outlets that criticize them. Their executive director has informed me that that's not true.
We Charity has only ever launched one lawsuit where the organization has suffered harm because a media outlet published information that was known to be demonstrably false. We would not, and has not, however, sue any person or outlet for being critical, and certainly would have no grounds for doing so on that basis alone. Defamation is not the same as criticism or commentary. As a matter of clarification, the Kielburger family launched the other defamation suits personally, including against Canada Land, the source you quoted in your last video.
Glad to hear that. I apologize for the misunderstanding. Next up, I said that We had lied, claiming that they had no financial relationship with Trudeau. They explained,
to provide context that I assume you had not considered, the government of Canada is required to reduce or eliminate real and potential conflicts of interest. Accordingly, in deciding whether to award the project to We Charity, the onus was on the government to determine whether there was the appearance of a conflict of interest in compliance with the government's conflict of interest rules, and, if so, to take the necessary steps to avoid such conflict. We Charity was the recipient of the project, and it was not our responsibility to ensure that the government was complying with its own conflict of interest rules.
that's fair. I hadn't considered that, and yeah, I don't think that that's really on We. Now, after that, I said that We had started paying Trudeau's family for speeches, which they used to do for free. We responded,
This is not correct and demonstrably untrue. Margaret and Alexandre Trudeau are both represented by a speakers bureau, as the majority of professional speakers are, and all booking and therefore payment was dealt with through the speakers bureau. Margaret Trudeau spoke at numerous We Charity events, as she does for various other charitable organizations and corporate events, including, for example, banks which deal with the federal government, because she is a respected mental health issues advocate. Further, as a matter of clarification, some talent, including Margaret Trudeau, were paid for participating in ancillary events. For example, donor-sponsor events hosted the evening prior to We Day. Talent was never paid for delivering We Day speeches.
okay, I was not aware that Margaret and Alexandre Trudeau had representation, and so sorry for that. Although, I will clarify that I never said that they were paid for We Days. Regardless, the next mistake I made is probably the biggest one and requires some explanation. So, I was aware of We's ongoing defamation suits. I explained in the video that I was just not going to discuss the particulars of those cases at all, specifically to avoid a situation like, oh, I don't know, the one that I'm in right now. One of these cases has to do with a lawsuit from 25 years ago in which the Kielburgers sued Saturday Night Magazine for running a story that claimed that Craig's mom was running things and, more importantly, claimed that she was depositing hundreds of thousands of dollars of donor money into the family's bank account. I didn't mention the money for the reasons I mentioned earlier, but did offhandedly say that they sued the magazine for saying that Craig's mom was essentially acting as his manager. We asked me to also note that in that suit, Saturday Night Magazine had a Supreme Court judgment issued against them, and Craig Kielburger received what was at the time the second largest libel settlement in Canadian history, which he donated to charity. I mean, he donated it to his charity, but he did donate it. Now, this was an honest mistake. I wasn't trying to spread misinformation, but this did absolutely come off as misleading, so I am honestly sorry to the Kielburgers for that. Next up, We took issue with me saying that the book We Economy by Craig and Mark Kielburger and Holly Branson was, quote, unbelievably satanic. In my opinion, it's a bad book, but I shouldn't have said that it encourages devil worship. If you're looking for an actual satanic text, I would recommend The Book of Lies, The Disinformation Guide to Magic and the Occult, or the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Shea and Robert Anton Wilson, and I'm sorry to anyone who I may have led astray on your journey down the left-hand path. I also referred to We Charity as allegedly evil. this was meant as a joke in reference to the very negative coverage that they've received, but it's also untrue, as I'm not aware of anyone with any relationship to the charity who specifically said that they're evil, and I apologize for that. Comedy's all about finding the line, you know? They also took issue with the thumbnail and description of my video in which I used the words corrupt charities. This was just some clickbait that I used to be provocative, but I shouldn't have done that and have now changed it. I apologize to them for being misleading there, and also to you because clickbait thumbnails are very lame. They also didn't like that I said that We Charity has been alleged to have done every sketchy thing that you could imagine. In fairness, there have been a lot of very wild allegations made against them, but I should have done better research and provide more context, and maybe also refrain from making assumptions about the power of my audience's imagination. Let's be honest, you folks are freaks, and I shouldn't have doubted you. At one point, I also said that, quote, as with anything Craig Kielburger says, it's worth asking, is that true? This was honestly a bit of a low blow. Despite any criticisms I have of Craig or we, it's not really fair to call him personally dishonest, and so I am especially sorry for that one. And then, for the last thing that they felt was excessively harsh, I said that, quote, things that happen in Kenya are actual supervillain shit, and mentioned, quote, cartoonish crimes We Charity has been alleged to have committed. Now, this was clearly hyperbolic and may have been harsh, but also, in 2021, a journalist named Reed Cohen claimed to have discovered that a school that was built in Kenya to honor his dead son had its plaque taken down and replaced with that of another person who was then told that the school was built in their honor. The Kielburgers have personally addressed this, saying that, quote, we are heartbroken about what happened, and that, quote, this should never have happened, we made a mistake. While, again, I could have been less inflammatory, as far as I'm aware, this is not in dispute, and, in my opinion, is a bad thing to have done. For their part, we did not deny this at all, but did add this.
That being said, it was later reported in the Washington Post that the same man, Reed Cohen, tried to extort the charity for 20 million USD. If the funds were not paid, Reed Cohen, who is a journalist from Las Vegas, would otherwise use his media contacts to create public infamy for the organization. We Charity did not pay the money.
So, what the opinion piece they mention reports is that Cohen tried to get We to pay him $20 million due to psychological damages, with the additional demands that we A, reimburse Cohen as well as everyone who donated thanks to his work promoting We, and that B, his son's name be removed from all We buildings. Cohen said that if his demands were met, that he'd delete all social media posts about We and stop giving interviews and writing about them. Whereas, if they didn't meet those demands, We would have to pay him an additional $20 million, and he'd use his media connections, which he specifically listed, to create public infamy for We. To me, Reed Cohen seems more like a very, very angry, grieving father than an opportunist. I'm not sure how I feel about everything that he's done, but in my opinion, it seems a bit weird to bring that all up as if it somehow minimizes the very bad thing that We has admitted to having done. Yes, we did the terrible thing that he accused us of, but in our defense, he seems really mad about it. Moving on, I also said that We had a work culture that guilted employees into working long hours. This was their response.
There is simply no basis for claiming that the organization would guilt or shame our employees, and yet you make similar comments on several occasions. On the topic of compensation, We Charity offers employment packages, including salaries that are comparable to nonprofit sector standards in Canada. Justice Gouge, a respected Canadian jurist who served on the Ontario Court of Appeal, has conducted 3 separate examinations of We, one of which was an assessment of We's workplace culture, policies, and leadership, which included such topics as health and safety practices, compensation, and the career trajectory for junior employees. He found the policies, work culture, compensation, and hours were typical in the nonprofit sector. The full report can be found on the We website at we.org. Seeking to better understand the employee experience and identify opportunities for improvement, in 2018 we engaged LHH Knightsbridge, a leading human resources consulting firm, to conduct an evaluation of organization. As part of the review, the firm conducted 90-minute randomized interviews with employees across the organization on the subject of culture. Among the findings was that employees of all tenures described we as having a robust and well-defined culture and a culture of generally high appreciation of employees. The full reports can be found on the WE website at we.org.
Now, to be fair, I didn't include this source in my previous video, so there's no way that we could have known this, but this claim was something that I heard from interviewing a former Me2We employee who spoke to me on the condition of anonymity. Here's what they said. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I used to be very, very, very involved with Me2We. I used to work with Me2We. And I was like, I drank the Kool-Aid as a kid, like probably from the age of 10, I was involved with Me2We. I have like a lot of background, like personal experience.
I mean, like, yeah, can I ask, like, what was your experience like with how they treat their employees or what the, like, work culture there is like?
It wasn't good. Like, it really wasn't good. And it was confusing because they just preach so much. Like, if you know about Me2We, if you've heard about Me2We, if you took part in a We Day, or anything, like, they preach so much about, like, their morals and their beliefs about, like, international development and sustainability, but then, like, you just hear, like, really horrible things about what's happening at the company. Like, just, I mean, the classic, like, people are underpaid, completely overutilized. I feel like a lot of people that work for the company, again, were kids, you know, that drank the Kool-Aid, and so they just, like, believe in it, like, blindly. And there was a culture of, like, I'm giving all my time. I don't have holidays, but, like, it's for Me2We. Like, I'm the best employee here. Like, there was almost, like, a competition of, like, did you believe in Me2We? Are you giving Me2We everything? Because, like, you're doing, this is a good cause that you're doing, but you're not being compensated for it. But there was still, like, this, like, really toxic, like, oh yeah, you can have my holidays. Like, this is for Me2We.
Now, feel free to take that with a healthy pinch of salt, but in my opinion, that account seems to line up with how another former employee described the culture at We. Tawfiq S. Rangwala was a former We executive who stepped down to write the book What We Lost, which we specifically recommended I consult when working on this video. In it, he writes this. Countless staff told me that working at We was the most fun they ever had, and they relished what we all viewed as a transformative movement. For others, however, the ceaseless demands resulted in quick burnout, and the drive for excellence felt overbearing. Dan acknowledged the drawbacks, which included not being compensated for all that time and stress. Those two accounts sound pretty consistent in my opinion, but We has responded that it depends on who you ask. They have had over 2,000 employees over the years, and so obviously mileage will vary. They have 3 stars on Glassdoor, and just browsing the reviews, a lot of them mentioned bad work-life balance, although lots of people clearly liked working there too. We also asked me to mention that they won the Canada's Top 10 Most Admired Corporate Cultures Award twice, and the Canada's Top Employer for Young People Award 3 times. So the next few issues are ones that I pretty much fully screwed up though. One was that I said that some former employees have described the living accommodations that We provided for their employees as cult-like. Here's We's response.
During a period of time, We offered housing to staff as part of their employment contract. What this means is that, when hired, employees were offered 2 compensation packages to choose from. One, which included housing as part of the package, subject to availability, and one without. If an employee elected the compensation package that included housing, the cost of rent was deducted from their annual salary. The difference, however, was substantially lower than market rent rates. For context, during this period, a majority of our employees were recent university graduates, many of whom were living on their own in Toronto for the first time. The apartments offered to employees were conveniently located relative to the office, and again, were substantially more affordable than market rent. As a result, there was typically a waitlist for the housing. The improper claim that the organization is cult-like is a description that a Canada Land journalist has without basis sought to advance.
So yeah, I messed this one up. The cult-like description is in reference to claims that some employees would live, work, and go on vacation in the form of aid trips with their coworkers, something which could, in my opinion, potentially lead to a very toxic work environment. I misquoted the podcast Candyland here though. No former or current employee is quoted as describing this living situation as cult-like. Instead, that was an observation made by a journalist. Sorry about that. After that, I claimed that people would often be worked to the point of exhaustion at We Days. Then I said that we had doctors on site who would inject people in the ass with something to keep them going. This was inaccurate. Here's Wee's explanation.
We did not hire doctors to be on site at any We Day events. One year, a holistic naturopathic practitioner visited the event venue for a limited number of We Days. They offered a range of 100 plus treatment options. One of them was to provide staff with vitamin B12 shots for immunity support as it was flu season. To be clear, they were not intended to get staff moving again. The benefit was completely voluntary, meaning staff needed to sign up for an appointment and choose their treatment based on what was best for them.
Again, my bad there. The next few issues were based off of a critique of We Days that I found in a paper published in the Canadian Journal of Education called Me to We Social Entrepreneurship, A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, written by Carrie Karsgaard and Millette Schultz. In it, they write, as We Day participation is predicated on competition and earned through participation in We Schools activities, it already promotes hierarchies of privilege. These hierarchies are compounded by the urban and spectacular venues. However, when I talked about this, I made the mistake of saying that kids need to earn their way to We Day specifically by fundraising for We Charity. We explained,
engaging young people in service around the cause that they are most passionate about was at the core of We Day's domestic activities, and We Day was one initiative that did this. It was not simply a concert that people could buy a ticket to. Rather, it was a reward for action and a tool for inspiring and motivating young people to continue engaging in service activities. Students earned their ticket through volunteer service in support of any cause or organization. They were never required to fundraise, let alone fundraise for We Charity. The only requirement was that the students engage in one local action and one global action. Many young people ran food drives, advocacy and awareness campaigns, petitions, and they supported over 1,000 different organizations.
I then compared the slogan, earn your way to We Day, to MLM marketing, and then said that We was excluding poorer kids, by which I meant that there were barriers to kids in poorer and remote regions to attending We Day events. We responded,
your claim that We Charity engaged in any such fundraising techniques is incorrect. Again, at the core of our domestic activities is inspiring and empowering young people to care and act in support of the causes they care most about, and to provide them with the tools and resources to take action. While we certainly ran fundraising campaigns, as does every charity that is not a private foundation, encouraging young people to fundraise for We Charity was, again, not our mission, and the students who did fundraise for We Charity were certainly not uniquely rewarded for doing so. We did not use any form of MLM sales techniques. The majority of our programs and activities were for resource-poor schools and provided free of costs. Your statements are demonstrably untrue. In short, kids could earn their entry by supporting any charity, including doing volunteer work.
So yeah, again, made a mistake there. Kids did not have to raise money for We. Next, I said that We events were inaccessible because kids from rural and remote areas had to get there themselves. Obviously, I didn't think that the kids had to personally arrange their own travel and accommodations, but that would probably be arranged by their school. The point was, again, to raise concerns about additional barriers being in place for kids who are less advantaged. However, I should have been clearer in my language. As We says,
students attended We Day through their schools, and therefore schools organized their transportation. One We Day event was hosted per province or state, and thousands of students attended the events every year from outside of the cities where they were hosted. Hundreds of rural schools participated in the live events, and transportation was organized by their school boards. Your statements are demonstrably untrue. In addition, every event was recorded and broadcast online live for all schools and students to be able to experience the event to ensure full accessibility.
My bad. Glad to hear that kids are able to attend these things in spite of the challenges of getting there. Next, I pointed out that We Day events aren't at all accessible to the people We is most trying to help, children in Kenya. Going back to that paper by Karsgaard and Schultz, they note, rather than struggling with the uncomfortable learning required to challenge unjust systems, students at We Day instead are enabled to feel they are in alignment with the trajectories of inspiring celebrities, experiencing self-fulfillment as co-stars with these celebrities in We's story of change for good. Problematically, such positioning may contribute to the exaltation of Canadian students as naturally superior to those they aspire to help, according to white savior logics that pervade humanitarianism, including in both education and mediatized spaces. I went on to suggest that the money for We Days could be better spent on paying staff more or building more schools in Kenya. This was meant to be more of a critique of We's priorities than a practical suggestion, but We has explained that that would not be possible.
The cost of executing We Days did not impact our employees' salaries nor our budget for international programming. We Days were paid for by specific donors and corporate sponsors. Such funding was restricted to We Day related activities and, therefore, could not be directed to support any activities outside of We Day. These companies or foundations wanted their funds to be used domestically, not internationally. There was no option to take these funds and use them for international programs, such as building schools. You obviously do not understand how accounting practices and charities work and the idea of restricted donations.
A little rude there in my opinion, but also true. I was not aware of restricted donations. Yo, every friend group's got that one guy who doesn't know about restricted donations. And if yours doesn't, then you obviously do not understand how accounting practices and charities work. I then criticized We Schools, a program in which we would provide teaching aids and curriculums to schools. These have been criticized for centering Western notions of development and celebrity humanitarians like the Kielburgers themselves. I go on to criticize We Schools for being a way for corporations to advertise in schools. However, I wrongly stated that the materials they provided came covered in corporate logos. As We explains,
it is only with the support of corporate funders that We Schools materials could be provided to schools and educators at no cost, which was important so that they could remain accessible to any who wished to use them. The materials, however, were intentionally not covered in corporate logos. Rather, editions acknowledge the support of the corporate funder on the package the materials arrived in and/or on an acknowledgement page, for example, stating, "Thanks to our corporate partner, name." We engaged with educators in the development of all We Schools materials to ensure the content was engaging and the format in which it was delivered was appropriate. An educator in our network, who was in charge of partnerships with the Toronto District School Board, shared a letter with us about the impact of the We Schools program and the appropriateness of corporate logos on the materials. She writes, "I am highly impressed that We has successfully forged business partnerships so that educational opportunities and resources are readily made available without cost to educators and students. And I am especially perceptive to We's keen attention and conscious decision-making not to place corporate logos front and center of any publications pertaining to student viewing or educational resources." The full report can be found on the We website at we.org.
Fair enough, I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions that these were covered in ads. Next up, I criticized the for-profit social enterprise Me to We, saying that it was a way for We to get around regulations. I then went on to say that the organizations are opaque about their funding and that it seems like not many people understand the relationship between the charity and the social enterprise, which struck me as suspicious. Again, returning to Karsgaard and Schultz, they note that this has been a common and consistent criticism of We, saying, "One of the early criticisms of the We enterprise was the lack of transparency about how funds move between the different We entities and how the Kielburgers benefited from the work of these thousands of children." See Jeffress 2012. For We's part, they've said that
Canada's income tax limits the activities that a charity is permitted to engage in. We Charity, as a charity, cannot sell trips or products, and therefore had no reason to mislead consumers to believe that they were purchasing goods and/or services from the charity. As many in the charitable sector have commented, it is increasingly challenging for charities that they are generally not permitted to earn income from business activities. Me to We Social Enterprises, the name itself says it is a social enterprise and not a charity, was established to support the work of We Charity through three principal avenues. 1. 100% of the profits of Me to We were either donated to We Charity or reinvested to grow the social enterprise. Providing often millions of dollars in annual donations meant that We Charity, 1, has not needed to rely on television advertising, street canvassers, and other such forms of fundraising utilized by other charities, and 2, could implement long-term programs and initiatives confidentially, knowing that it could rely on Me to We's donations in the event that donations from other sources would be affected, for example, due to a recession. 2, creating income and employment opportunities in travel and hospitality, artisan products, and fair trade consumables in the underserved regions where We Charity works around the world. 3. Justice Gouge, formerly from the Court of Appeal, looked at this issue carefully and, on the subject of the Kielburgers' compensation, reported that Craig and Mark Kielburgers' T4 slips showed that they each received an income of $125,173.02 from Me to We in 2018, and that they each received an income of $113,461.54 from Me to We in 2017. The CFO of Me to We and We Charity certifies that these amounts represent the full extent of any payments which the Kielburgers received from Me to We in these years. We's CFO also certifies that neither Craig nor Mark Kielburger has ever received any form of salary from We Charity or its predecessor, Free the Children. The full letter can be found on the We website at we.org.
Although, coming back to that interview with the former Me to We employee,
I didn't have any critical thinking skills at that time either, so I was kind of just like, I believed what I was told. Like, I was like, oh my God, I'm doing some amazing stuff right now. So it's kind of started by us like fundraising in elementary school, and we would like fund, we were building a school, that's what we were told, and or building a well. And each brick that we would like put up on the wall was like $100 of donations that like we had been raising as like elementary school students. And then slowly like we would brick by brick on a wall like build a school, and each brick represented $100. And then when we built the school, we're like, oh my God, like we just built a school, like holy shit, that's amazing. And we believed that. And like in retrospect, like the way that they communicate how the donations are being used are literal, and but it's very blurry as to like where that money's actually going.
We has in turn responded to that interview by saying,
This former employee, as shared in the introductory comments, is a Me to We employee who works for the social enterprise and not the charity. This person obviously was not in the accounting team or senior management and, as a result, has little insight in these areas in order to make this comment. A qualified board of directors and a team of qualified accountants ensure the funds are used in the manner intended. All the funds raised are outlined in the We Charity's independently audited financial statements, which are available on the organization's website at we.org.
in my opinion, this is a bit of a gray area in terms of how responsible We is for making this clear, considering that they are working with children. While I don't really think that this is something that We intentionally hid, and I shouldn't have implied that they were being dishonest here, it sounds to me from their reply that We doesn't consider anyone outside the charity's accounting department or senior management qualified to understand their business practices. So it seems fair to say that elementary school kids certainly weren't aware of this. Next, I said that some of the brands that We partnered with, such as Hershey's Chocolate, a company which uses child slave labor, were evil. We took issue with this and have responded by saying,
We Charity established a thorough and robust procedure for vetting potential corporate partners to ensure that it only works with corporations committed to building socially responsible supply chains. One of the partners you mentioned is Hershey's, a company we decided to work with because it had a demonstrated clear intention and path to eliminating child labor from its supply chain entirely. We were actively working with them to help achieve this important goal.
So I did acknowledge in my video that Hershey's is promising to remove child slave labor from their supply lines, and you know what? I wish We all the best of luck in helping them with that. Quitting using child slave labor is the hardest thing that you'll ever do. Or is that smoking? Finally, this is another thing I just got wrong and was for sure a pretty dumb mistake on my part. I said that we denied their partnership with Hershey's. This isn't true. It was a misunderstanding of the claims that they were denying their partnership with Kellogg's. We never actually partnered with Kellogg's. This stemmed from leaked internal slides of a mock-up for a partnership with them. As they explain,
"We never denied that a Hershey's ad campaign existed. Instead, you have falsely accused us of doing so, presumably based on Canadaland having falsely stating in an article and podcast that we had a partnership with Kellogg's. Again, not Hershey's." For context, prior to the release of Canadaland's article and podcast, we informed Canadaland that the alleged partnership did not exist. There had been no transfer of funds, and the cereal box mock-up presented as evidence was simply that, a mock-up pulled from a marketing PowerPoint, not an actual product photo. Mark Burry is, as you may know, a Canadian media expert and lawyer, author, and journalist. He served as a member of the Parliamentary Press Gallery for over 24 years, has written for numerous publications, and is a recipient of the RBC Taylor Prize for Literary Nonfiction and the National Magazine Award. In addition to several other articles I share below, Mark Burry has written extensively about Jesse Brown and Canadaland and has labeled them to be fake news. Fake news! In one article on his website called fairpress.ca, Mark Burry wrote, "I'll give $10,000 to anyone who's got a Kellogg's box with a Wii logo. The prize has yet to be claimed." In the article, he writes, "Canadaland spread this image all over social media with a damning quotation from Wii denying a partnership. It was supposedly the smoking gun proving a secret and sleazy between Kellogg's and Me to Wii. One problem, the alleged partnership, just like the cereal box, never existed." The full article can be found at fairpress.ca, among other articles exposing the truth on this issue and detailing major inaccuracies about the work of Jesse Brown and Canadaland and its reporting on We Charity. We Charity continues to work with Hershey's today on a program that supports mental and emotional wellness among young people.
You know, I wonder how accessible those programs are for the kids who farm coca for Hershey's. They also added,
"A book called What We Lost," get it? Was published last year explaining more about the issue raised in this podcast. It was a #1 bestseller in Canada. A free podcast version of the book can be found on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. The podcast was narrated by Martin Luther King III, the eldest son of Dr. King.
So yeah, sorry to we and to all of you. I promise to do better in the future, and that the Voluntourism video is coming soon, and I'm really excited for that. Thanks so much for watching, and have a happy holidays. We also want to add this.
Sam, thank you for kindly considering our thoughts. We respect that you raise important questions about international development and charities. As for We Charity, we're certainly not perfect. We were started by a group of middle school students and run as a youth-led organization. When we made mistakes, we always tried to learn. We hope we got the most important things right. And the outcomes is 200,000 children overseas with daily education and 1 million people with health care and clean water. In the process, Canadian youth completed 40 million hours of service for local and global causes. Plus, one Canadian comic who supported the charity in his youth went on to launch a very successful YouTube channel.
Yeah, dude, if I hadn't given like $200 when I was 18 to pretty much the only charity I knew existed, I'd probably be dead or in jail right now instead of talking to you. To be fair to we, though, they definitely have given me a lot of material for comedy over the years.
Welcome to Cribs East Africa Style. My name is Craig Kilwiger. I'm the founder of Free the Children and also of Me to We. We promise you a Cribs unlike one you've ever seen before. You know, God, it's amazing what they managed to build in the absolute middle of nowhere, Africa.
I'll see you next month.
I just want to say as a quick disclaimer, this song sucks, the original sucks, and this version sucks too.
It's Christmas time, there's no need to be afraid. At Christmas time, we let in light and we banish shade. And in our world of plenty, we can spread a smile of joy. Throw your arms around the world at Christmas time. Let's say a prayer, pray for the other one. At Christmas time, it's hard, but when you're having fun, there's a world outside your window, and it's a world of dread and fear, where the only water flowing is the bitter sting of tears. And the Christmas bells that ring there are the clanging chimes of doom. Well, tonight, thank God it's them instead of you. it's Christmas time. The greatest gift they'll get this year is life. But nothing ever grows, no rain, no rivers flow. Do they know it's Christmas time at all? Here's to you, raise a glass for everyone. Here's to them underneath that burning sun. Do they know it's Christmas time at all?
You know what, mate? I'm not sure these Africans know it's bloody Christmas. I have an idea. We'll write a song. Yeah, a song will make everything better.
Feed the world. Feed the world. Feed the world. Let them know it's Christmas time. Feed the world. Let them know it's Christmas time. Feed the world. Let them know it's Christmas time. Feed the world. Let them know it's Christmas time. Feed the world. Let them know it's Christmas time. Feed the
This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Click the link in the description or go to surfshark.deals/we'reinhell to get 85% off of Surfshark for 2 years plus an additional 3 months for free.